very much. The first time that I met George Jones, which was only 2 times total. The first time there was a tribute album that to Webb Pierce that we were working on, and they had the band cut the tracks in advance, and then they slotted a bunch of singers to sing over the tracks in the studio. And when I saw that George was performing before my track, I of course hurried down to the studio early to watch him. And this was in about 2002, I think. And as it happened, he wasn't in good voice that day. He had a cold or something, and so his vocal didn't happen. Although he was game, and he tried for about 5 minutes, and he did some stuff that sounded really cool. But then he stepped out of the vocal booth, and he just kind of relaxed and chatted and hung around for a little bit. And so that was my chance to sort of say hello to him and get a picture. So somebody got a camera, and I stood. If you know the old country stars, George, being a real good example from that generation that came along in the 20s and 30s, they were kind of like on average a foot shorter than us nowadays. And they were kind of like stunted, musculature from the hard times that they lived through. So George was like that tall next to me, and we're posing for the picture. And kind of a stocky, pretty broad guy. His chest was broad, but he was short in stature. So we're standing there, and he looks up to me, and he said the only 3 words that I remember him saying to me that day, and the very few that he said. He looked up at me and he goes, "Mutt and Jeff." Which was a very hip cultural reference to trot out. It took me a minute to know what he's talking about, but he meant that I was tall and he was short. So, Mutt and Jeff. And the second time that I met him, that I worked with him, somebody had asked me to put together another tribute record. This one to Johnny Paycheck. And Johnny and George were great, carousing buddies, and probably wore each other ragged in the great cocaine days of the late 70s and into the 80s. And of course, their relationship goes way back before that. So anyway, when I got this assignment, I thought, if I get George Jones to sing on this record, that would just totally put it over the top. So I called his manager, and I asked her to put a bug in his ear on my behalf, and just to sort of to give her a clue what it sounded like, because this record had a lot of good sounds on it. It had Rip Olcart and Lloyd Green, a lot of good players on it. So I sent her a track, and the track was me singing with the band, singing a song that George wrote that Johnny sang in like about 1959 or something, a really early song of Johnny's. And so I sent that down there, and I sort of waited to see what the reaction was, and then I got a call shortly after. And she goes, she said, "Well, we got the song, and George he liked the song, and he's interested in working on the record, but he expressed a certain degree of astonishment that he was the author of the song, and he said, 'Are you sure that I wrote that song?' And I said, 'Well, no, not really, but Robbie Fulks in Chicago says that you did write that song, and he might have made it up, but he probably, he might know what he's talking about.'" And George said, "Well, that's really interesting." He goes, "That's a good song." He goes, "That's a really good song." And there it lay for another week or so, and then I got a call back with a little update about a week later. And she goes, "George really likes that song, and so he wants to sing that song on the record." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but he can't, because I sang it. That's actually I sang it. That's the track on the record. But I'm glad he likes it." She said, "Yeah, he got really interested in that song so much that he went down to BMI to look in the database to see if he really was the writer of the song. He checked it out." And he said, "Yeah, damn, I did write that song. That's a really good song. I wrote it." So, well, you never know with these guys. I mean, they might have written it and forgotten it, or they might have kind of bought it for $20 from somebody. That happens sometimes. I'm not saying that did in this case, but you never know. So anyway, the day of the session comes, and as has often been commented, he he was not the king of style in sort of the New York fashion world sense. He was sort of the king of an anti-style that was so anti-stylish that it was again stylish. So he came into the session in like lime green slacks and a cap that said "Golfer's World" across it. As cool as hell. And the thing I remember about the session was that it was slotted for like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he showed up at 2:45, like moderately late, so that we were getting a little bit worried. And then he showed up at 2:45, and we found out that we had until 3:10 with him because he wanted to get home before the really bad traffic in Nashville started at 3:15 or something like that. Anyway, he imposed this ridiculous restriction but it turned out not to be ridiculous because, of course, such a great singer. So he gets in there and he sang it literally 2.5 times over the course of 10 minutes. And just sounded great, and it was just like they said in the obituary in the Times, that every syllable is an occasion for suspense with George Jones. You just never know what's going to happen when he starts to sing. So like this tune, which originally the tune originally had a melody to it. it went friend, don't take her, she's all I've got. Please don't take her love away from me. I'm a-begging you, friend. Don't take her, she's all I've got. I'm like outlining on the guitar so you can hear it's a true melody. It's everything in life I'll ever need. So in George, like every line was like, what the hell? And he was like, well, let me tell you now, friend. Don't take her, she's all I've got. Please don't take her love away from me. I'm a-begging with you, friend. Don't take her, she's all I've got. She's everything in life I'm ever gonna need. I say, oh, it sounds crazy, man. But this dude was singing his ass off, and like every line was different from the last. And he comes in and is like back to his old self again, you know, to his lime green slack self. He said, how's that? And I said, it's great. I said, can I get another picture with you? So we line up like this, and this is probably disgraceful of me that I did this, but it just popped into my mind and I did it. So we're standing there just like we had in 2002, like 3 years previous, standing there, and I looked down at him, I said, hey, Mutt and Jeff! Figuring that a guy that couldn't remember a song he had written wouldn't remember that either, which was true. He got a fresh laugh at that. I said, yeah, Mutt and Jeff! Anyway, that's George Jones. Here's a tune called The Race Is On. I feel tears welling up, going deep inside my heart's going. And it's terrible, loneliness, sorrow, painful, and I may never say. You might say that I was taking it hard since you broke me on. I would have wagered that I hide my sorrow. I may break right down the bone. Now the race is on, and here comes pride. Heartaches are going to the inside. My tears are holding back. They're trying not to fall. My heart's out of the running. True love scratch for another soul. Now the race is on and it looks like a heartache. And the winner loses all. Ventured in love, never once suspected the final results would be. Now I lit up a mirror, waking up each morning, the fighting that she's gone for me. She's painted, it's a name of one, matter when somebody new came up to win her, and I came out in second place. Now the race is on, and here comes pride, the backstage heartaches are going to the inside. Are holding back. They're trying not to fall. It's out of the running. True love scratched on another soul. man. Do a Johnny Paycheck number. I love the way you do